Welcome to another episode of Turning the Table. My name is Adam Lamb, and I am a career coach for chefs and hospitality professionals. And my co-host, Jim Taylor, who is busy getting into the studio right now, is the founder and CEO of Benchmark 60, dedicated to assisting food and beverage operators actively manage and be proactive about their associate workload, such they become the preferred employer in their market. As always, the chat is live. We'd love to have your comments and help guide the conversation. And today we're talking about leveraging data to drive local marketing. And it was funny because I went to the mailbox the other day and I had direct mail from several restaurants, one of which I think was Ruth Chris and a couple of other ones. And the first thing I thought of was like, that's really old school. Like some folks are really dedicated to their process. And I don't know about anybody else, but it seems like since the pandemic, everybody's been drinking from the fire hose. Like the first thing was, let's get the place open. Let's get the operations back up again. And it seems like a lot of those folks are now kind of in their flow. They've got consistent forecasting. They're fully staffed. Everything seems to be flowing. And maybe now is a great time to start looking at what you're doing for marketing, because I get that when the pandemic ended, all you were doing was holding on for dear life and just managing the operation. But I think you'll agree that the only way that we'll ever be able to grow our businesses is if we're actively marketing to our community, not only for new customers, but also for new associates. Hi, Jim.
Adam, good morning. Good afternoon, depending where you are.
You there, brother?
I'm here.
It's all good. And in a moment, we are going to be bringing in Matthew Marx, the CEO of Evocalize, and they make complex marketing push button simple. And in all transparency, Evocalize has been a trusted partner and sponsor of this particular podcast. And so we're really, really excited to get him, the man, on the mic. And we'll do that right after these messages.
Welcome to Turning the Table, the most progressive weekly podcast for today's food and beverage industry, featuring staff-centric operating solutions for restaurants in the hashtag New Hospitality Culture. Join Jim Taylor of Benchmark 60 and Adam Lamb as they turn the tables on the prevailing operating assumptions of running a restaurant in favor of innovative solutions to our industry's most persistent challenges. Thanks for joining us. And now, on to the show.
This episode is made possible by Evocalize. Evocalize makes complex local digital marketing push-button easy for anyone. Empower your franchises with programs that automatically optimize performance and program spending across Google, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all from one easy-to-use collaborative marketing platform. To find out more, go to turningthetablepodcast.com/Evocalize.
Jim, before we bring Matt in, I was curious. You talk to a lot of operators almost daily. And so what have you been hearing from these folks when it comes to like what they're actually doing for local marketing? And is it working?
Well, can answer that lots of different ways. And I'm looking forward to hearing what Matthew has to say about it. But the thing that I keep hearing, regardless of if it's working or it's not working, or what market they're in, or what type of concept they're in, even quick serve, full serve, fine dining, anything. Everything I keep hearing is, how do we find a way to drive more customers? Because in most markets, based on what's happening in the world, people are spending less, right? So if we're seeing people spending less, we have to find a way more than ever to drive more customers. And so that's the big discussion I keep hearing is we got to find a way to drive more traffic. They can always try to sell more to their existing customer and that kind of thing, which is obviously going to be good. But the whole concept of local, drive more people, not tourists, not, obviously that stuff's good too. But this conversation on local marketing, I think, is incredibly valuable. What are you hearing, Adam?
I couldn't agree more. And I think, you put a great, well, let's get the expert in here and let's ask him. So we'd like to welcome Matthew Marx to the conversation, the CEO
Matthew,
of Evocalize.
How are you?
Welcome, sir.
Hey guys, how's it going? Loved some of the intro and lead up, and and Roos Chris direct mail postcards and how do we drive more people into the restaurant location, man? You're getting me all jazzed up.
Well, we're excited to have you. I think there's going to be lots of good discussion. But it's interesting because I was literally talking to an operator yesterday that has a little restaurant in a medium-sized market, and we're looking at what's happening with their business, right? And we're seeing these, I call it customer behavior, but spend basically. We're seeing this decline happening because people are holding on to their money a little bit more than they maybe have been in the past a bit. And they're just going, we got to find a way to get more customers. And you know what the first idea they had, and it's funny that Adam mentioned the postcard or whatever you want to call it. They said, let's give some little handouts to every one of our staff members, and they can go and hand them physically to their friends, and we'll count how many come back. And I'm going, hey, it's grassroots. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's better ways.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's interesting. I can tell you story after story about this stuff, right? So yeah, I was at a local a franchise location, I don't know, maybe a month ago now, and the franchise owner was in the store, and so the store is empty. And we live around the corner in Austin, Texas, from this location that had never been in, never seen it, never knew it was even there, right? And so, but we saw it and thought, let's try this new spot out. And store place was completely empty, and it's a cool concept, right? Where you have the taps for beer, and I love drinking beer here and there, right? And so I can go self-serve and fill up my beer.
Cool.
So I have start a conversation with this franchise owner, and I said, how's the business doing? How long has it been open? A month, 2 months? Because this is our first time in. And he said, we've been open a year. And I said, well, I live in the neighborhood right around the corner. I've never heard of you. What are you doing? He's like, It's been slow, man. And I said, well, what are you doing to bring people? He has no idea who I am, right? So I'm like, what are you doing to bring people in? Because I just want to help them, right? Like, these are operators. They've sunk their money, their time, their livelihood, everything into these businesses, right? And so to me, it hurts me. You walk in there and it's empty. But the food was good. The service was good. He's in there himself, right? Like scrappy. So I asked him, and he said, man, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I've managed restaurants for a long time. I went and talked with the local high school. I put some flyers up there. I went around, I put them on bulletin boards. And I put signs on the wall, and and I'm like, look, like, what are you doing in TikTok? What are you doing in, right? And so where are you? Are you the places where people are today? And he just had no idea, right? And so, and he's trying to run a business and make a business successful, so it's hard. So I get that, but it's on one hand, you get that level of complexity, which is like, to me, non-existent. And you get the other level, which is, I was talking to my 13-year-old son yesterday, and he said, Dad, he's a Domino's fan, right? So he's got the Domino's app loaded up, and he'll just randomly like spend his own money and get a Domino's delivered to a rogue Domino's instead of mom's like healthy dinner, right? And so he's like, Dad, I don't get it. We talk marketing around the table, so it's a little different, but he's like, Dad, I don't get it. Domino's is messaging me at like 2 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm at school. They're messaging me at 10 p.m. It's missing the mark. They should message me right at 5 or 6 p.m. when I'm hungry. And I said, you know what? He's like, they're really bad marketers, Dad. And I said, I've worked with the Domino's folks. They're pretty smart. And I said, you know what they're doing? They've got a queue that's an hour and a half long at 5 p.m. Their kitchen is fully booked. But at 3 p.m. and 9 p.m., they need more people to come in because the folks are sitting around waiting for orders, right? And so that's really smart marketing. So we have like this like someone walking around, not enough hours in the day to visit the number of schools and physical locations to make you drive real traffic, to Domino's at a high sophistication level, looking at load forecasting and demand and driving it when and where it's needed. So this thing runs the gamut.
Wow. So yeah, that's really interesting. And you guys spend time with all kinds of restaurants, quick serve, full serve, all kinds of stuff. Maybe this is jumping ahead a little bit, but one of the things that I've been really, looking forward to asking you, when it comes to that, you just mentioned TikTok, and we've talked lots with some of the experts on TikTok around, marketing and that kind of stuff. Had a few of them on the show. Is that best for quick serve? Is it best for full serve? Does it matter? Who should be doing that?
Everyone. I mean, like and those of us with like, some gray hair sometimes look sideways at TikTok. And frankly, even I, having kind of grown up in this industry, was skeptical, if you rewind a few years, that we should even build the functionality into our technology, because it takes a lot of investment to build a new channel, like a new platform into the technology stack, to make it be able to unlock all this data and be real time and all this stuff, right? It's a multi-million-dollar technology investment for each new channel you support. So it's a big decision. So we did a lot of experimentation, and TikTok is crushing it, y'all. And it is independent of type of business. It crushes it in real estate. It crushes it for home loans, like home loans in TikTok. Like, how are you going to make that cool, right? It is just, look, it's where the eyeballs are, right? And so you have to, as a local business, be where the eyeballs are with relevant content. So we always think about like the content is the story, right? And it's like, what is the story you're telling, regardless of whether that's a promotion and trying to get someone to click to online order, or whether it's like a grand opening or a we're here or a we're the best food. It doesn't matter, right? Like that's the story. And then it's like the audience is like who you're telling the story to, right? So we don't want to get caught up in marketing geekiness to everyone. That's as simple as it gets. Like, it's simple, right? Where are the people you're trying to tell the story to? If you're a local business, regardless of who you are, certainly all types of restaurants, you have to be in the major channels where folks are spending their time, or you're missing out, like the franchisee I talked about, who's going and driving posters into the wall at the local high school. And
it's not just for 13-year-olds dancing, right?
No. In fact, the fastest growing clip there is like our age, in TikTok. In fact, it skews wealthy. It skews affluent. So really? TikTok is a really, really interesting, kind of still emerging, even though it's got massive scale, local platform.
Interesting. So this might be, and because you're in the business of marketing, this would probably be an interesting question to ask you. And your answer might be a little bit biased, but is paid on TikTok doing substantially better than organic on TikTok? Or like, where does someone even start with that platform if they've never used it?
Well, I would say sign up and start watching content first, right? So if you're trying to do this on your own, which is hard, right? Because you got to learn it, right? And you're trying to run your business, right? So that's hard, and we're asking a lot. Because I'm telling you, do it on Instagram, use Reels, use old school blue Facebook. You got to be on Google. You got to be in Gmail and YouTube. Like, really, if you're doing it right, you got to be all those places.
Absolutely.
But the first starting point to me is just sign up. Like, just sign up and start watching, start following the topics that are in your neighborhood or in your local area. Start watching the types of things that resonate, because that will teach you about the platform. It's all about video. Like, if you haven't played on TikTok, it is a video channel, right? There is some static imagery and stuff you can do with static images. It feels like a non sequitur. Like it's the wrong type of content for the channel. So that can be as simple as just take a video, right? It's like the more organic it feels, the better in some ways in TikTok. And so anyway, just get a feel for it. That's a starting point. But I could talk for a long time on paid. You mentioned paid versus organic, and kind of how those two things fit into the marketer's puzzle and where you should be spending your time. But I won't go on a monologue straight into that topic.
Well, we can spend a little bit of time on some of that stuff. And Michael Bennett, your comment about that's our problem too. If you want to elaborate on that, I mean, Matthew might even be able to answer some of that stuff for you, while we go here. So if I'm a restaurant,
and I think it's important to state that.
Go ahead, Adam. You're good.
Sorry, brother. I got wonky spectrum.
Oh, good.
It just strikes me that, signing up for TikTok and all that stuff, it's also a great place to do research, like spying on your competitors to see what they're doing to get traction.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. I can honestly say that I think I do that with my competitors to see what they're up to. And I think there's so much conversation. I mean, it was so interesting, like I said, Matthew, having this discussion with this operator yesterday, trying to drive traffic. And a little bit in the intro that Adam and I were talking about, that's the thing that I just keep hearing from everybody is customers are spending less. They want a better deal. They want a cheaper price. They want something. They want more value. But so we got to find a way to drive more customers. Yeah. And something I hear your team talk a lot about is just the concept of local, right? So can you elaborate a little bit more on that? If I'm a company that has locations in multiple markets, what's the reason that you spend so much time talking about local versus maybe brand marketing, for example?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, we spend a lot of time talking about local. It doesn't mean brand's not important, right? So brand is building the brand at an overall level is important, but like we Michael's comment about trying to get people here during the 3 p.m. hours, for sure. Like again, the Domino's example, getting back to that, right? You have to have a machine when you're trying to do things like that, because you need to balance out your load, right? The last thing we want to do is run a ton of marketing and bring people in at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., wherever that burst is in your area, and now we're giving the guests a bad experience, right? And you have latent demand. So we can talk more about that for sure. It's a really good comment in the chat. In terms of your question, go ahead, Adam.
Well, and Michael Bennett works in the Florida Keys. So there are some places, some operations that are going to be continually challenged just by the virtue of their location, whether they have a kept audience like a hotel. Those people are checking out and they're leaving the building, and we're waiting for the other folks to show up, or you're freestanding, and there are some dry times on those streets. And so the fact is pulling all that into consideration of like, where's our peak periods? How do we best manage that? A little nod to Jim with Benchmark 60, because that's where he really excels in assisting operators to do that. But on the other side, we're really interested, like, what can an operator do from that standpoint? Maybe there's a couple of things that he can take action on right now, or advocate to his bosses, like, we got to actually get on this, because we're going to be missing out.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my reaction to that, let me start where Jim kind of asked the question and then fold it in, because these two are related, fold it into Michael's issue or question, right? So Jim, we focus on local. Brand for a national franchise. That's important, right? And so I don't want to take away from that, but to me, it's not the most important thing. Like the restaurant business is fundamentally local, right? It is fine. It's not national. Mortgages can be national. There's some local licensing requirements. There are industries that are fundamentally national. That is not this industry, right? And so, and we know from quantitative data, local advertising works 2 to 3 times better than national advertising does, right? So when you localize, people resonate with the feeling of local, the community. We're still a nation in a world of neighborhoods, right? And so we think in that way because it works better, right? I mean, 46% of searches in Google and other channels in the restaurant industry contain local keywords. Near me, with their neighborhood name, with the area name, with their high school, right? And so, and beyond that, right? Like my daughter's high school literally has a table set up in a system to allow them to order food delivery from outside vendors, from local restaurants, and they have a system for that. And so even with all the security in place, she was talking me through their system the other day, right? And so the drivers come, drop it, it's labeled, and then the student can come and grab it. And so these kids are ordering all day long. What are they doing during the day and night? They're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're on, right? And so how do we reach them? It's not a flyer, it's not a print mailer, it's not just brand advertising, it's that high school, targeting that high school in the channels they're spending time in during the times that they're looking to buy. And by the way, if we're looking to push demand, to fold this into Michael's question, you have to be there in a paid way. So I'll touch on the organic versus paid, right? Like we've talked a lot about TikTok. In Facebook, for instance, it used to be, if you rewind 10 years, you could organically post to your Facebook page, to your Facebook followers, and reach 80% of them. But what happened? and everyone caught on, right? And so everyone's being taught to like go organically post on your page, right? The problem is Facebook now needs to make money, right? So what does it do? And it's good at making money, right? So what does it do, right? It starts to reduce the number of people that see your post to the latest data now that I see. It's about 1.5% of your page followers, meaning if you're a location in a local restaurant and you post something like a promotion or you at 3 p.m. to Michael's point, and you expect it to drive people in, you're going to reach 1 to 2% of your followers. How many followers do you have to have for that location's Facebook page to do any good? It's impossible. The math doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to pay, right? And so and paid gets into a whole nested thing of like, okay, how do you do paid effectively, and how do you have enough time to do that across channels? Because I already said you got to be in Google, YouTube, Instagram, Reels, TikTok to reach these folks who are ordering. So so anyway, so that's a lot of things folded into one. But you start with, you have to be present, and if you don't have a tool to do it, you have to just break out of this organic posting, to Michael's point, and you got to just go start being. You can start with organic posting. You got to get into paid in your local area, because that's what really works. 2 to 3 times more performant is a massive difference in marketing.
Yeah, and I've got a follow-up question for you on that. But Michael, thank you for continuing to ask good questions here. He's talking about geofencing now, and it sounds to me like what he's asking around gathering addresses and numbers. And Michael, feel free to continue to chime in. But Matthew, are you reading that comment as talking about retargeting?
Yeah, I mean, there is no limit to the number of things we can do to gather data as an industry, right? Like we split this stuff into lots of buckets in our world, right? Where we think about remarketing even splits into several categories, right? So remarketing to us splits into 3 categories. Remarketing for those listening that don't know what I'm talking about is reaching your existing customers or those who are kind of in your sphere already, who know you, reaching them again, right? And so we think of remarketing or retargeting in 3 ways. One, the people in your lists that their phone numbers or their email addresses, or both, right? And so that's like CRM. You can use CRM marketing and reach lists, so loyalty lists and transaction lists, and there's third-party data you can pull to augment those. So that's 1. 2, website visitors. So if you have a website or if you have some web presence and you can get data from who's visiting your website or your online ordering app, and I can remarket to them, those are people you don't know their identity necessarily, but you may in certain cases, but you don't have to remarket to them and bring them back into online order or bring them back into the store. And the third area, which is kind of remarketing and kind of not, are people that are walking by your location or coming into your location, but you don't know who they are, right? And so that's a place where lots of people don't know where this data comes from. It largely comes from cell phone providers. So you can basically get device IDs and understand where people have been and what their traffic patterns are, and use that. So those are a few different types that we think about in remarketing, all super valuable to use for a location. And that's just the customers that we know about, ignoring the prospects, like I told in the story about the local franchisee.
Yeah.
So I don't even know that they're there, right? I'm not in their remarketing pool. Like I live in the area. You need to reach me a different way than that.
Makes sense. And so back to your comment about you got to get into paid. I've heard lots of operators say that they tried to get into paid. It didn't necessarily work the way they wanted it to. They spent way more than they wanted to and feel like they got nothing from it. The way that I interpret that, I'm curious your thought on this, because you're obviously the expert, or part of the team of experts. If you don't know how to use those platforms, it can take a lot of your money really quickly and not get what you're trying to get out of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not a great woodworker around the house, much to my wife's chagrin. I can fix some things, but so I'm I need the tool, right? So it's like the tool's holding me back, right? So I just had a circular saw and I'm like putting lumber out on, and I'm trying to redo, like I was trying to redo the trim and something. I'm like, I'm not going to hire someone. I'm going to go try and do it myself. And so I'm up on a ladder on like the 16-foot ceilings. I'm like trying to deal with this trim. It was a mistake to begin with, but so I have this trim and I've got it like strewn across these stands, right? Sawhorse stands thing. And I've got my circular saw and I keep missing the cut. I'm like, this is not working, right? And so I'm like, okay, I don't have the right tool, right? So I went out to Home Depot and I'm like, I'm buying this. I spent like, I don't know, $800 on this big like stand and this, saw. And I'm like, it like locks into an angle and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, this is awesome, right? This is going to fix me. And it's going to save me so much money in the long term because I don't have to hire someone, right? And so I get my lumber out and I'm cutting it, and it's a little easier. I still miss the cut. I'm like that far off from the cut. So there's a gap. So I'm like, maybe I'll caulk it. So I get out the caulk gun and the thing and I'm like caulking it. And my wife comes out. She's like, that looks terrible. She's like, yeah, we can't have a house that looks like that. And so she said, hire someone and go do it for you. Right. And so that's an analogy I'll use to this situation, right? Which is you can do it yourself. You absolutely can do it yourself. But it is damn hard. It is damn hard. And even for me, who's been a digital marketer for, 10, 15 years, it's hard, right? So my wife had a property in Northern Michigan, and we run, our technology runs, a lion's share of paid real estate marketing and real estate in North America, right? And so I'm like, I'm going to get into Meta and I'm going to get into Google and I'm going to just do it manually because it's one property, whatever, I can do it. It took me like 6 hours and I knew all of the levers and knobs to set. So it's hard, I guess, wow. even if I have the right, the right tools, which again, Michael said he hates Facebook, everyone to their own, but like, there are a lot of people in Facebook. And so if you're looking to purely optimize economics for your location, you got to be there, got to be in Instagram, got to be in TikTok, got to be in Google. Right. And so anyway, yeah, the tools are there. You can use them, but it's hard. It's admittedly hard on your own. So I'm asking a lot of the local operator.
Well, I think your woodworking analogy is bang on, and I would fall into that category too. I'm going to try and do it, and we'll go to Home Depot and try and piece it together, but it typically doesn't work nearly as well as if you just hired someone to do it for you. So that's a really good analogy and a good plug to hire an expert, I think, right? So
yeah, I mean, maybe, right? Like, I think, there's some folks that can do it themselves. It's time consuming, right? And so I'm not going to make this an infomercial, right? Like, so you definitely can do it yourself. You definitely can hire a local agency. The problem sometimes with local agencies is you don't really know what you get, and sometimes they're pretty expensive. And so, our whole philosophy was, why don't we just let you do it yourself and take control, but give you the easy button to do it, so that experts, your franchise system, your partners we have helped wire all the data in and made these things turnkey. So you just press a button and the system just does what you need it to do across all these channels, and you don't have to deal with it. But yeah, I mean, we hear that across industries, Jim. Like, I tried it didn't work. So it just doesn't work. And I'm like, I can guarantee you that the biggest businesses in the world, like Amazon, makes Facebook work. Trust me, right? Like it works. It works as a channel. It's just like they didn't become a $1 trillion company because their platform doesn't work for advertisers.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I'm a big Gary Vaynerchuk fan, and the analogy that he always uses is the value of a basketball for me is zero, but it's worth $1 billion to LeBron James, right? Because he knows how to use the tool. So I think to your point, that's very, very good.
Love Gary.
I think a question that I get a lot, and I can never answer, so maybe you can, and there's probably no specific blanket answer, but maybe you can try and sort of give the people listening a little bit of an answer on this. Is there some sort of target or goal or entry sort of level for, if I spend X number of dollars, I should get certain ROI on it? And there's probably a different answer for every platform, but is there kind of a generic way to think about that?
Well, so I think it's less about a different answer per platform. It's really more the answer for you, right? For your ROI, right? And so So the answer is different per industry. The answer is different per geography, right? So if you think about, okay, I'm a high-end restaurant in New York City, in Manhattan, right? And maybe I'm in Midtown, just to make it more specific, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm a high-end restaurant, and when I spend the money, I might be able to spend considerably more per individual to have a positive lifetime customer value, right? And so I wouldn't think about it so much in terms of channel by channel. We want to look at that in terms of what's working better and shift money. But I would look at it more about like, what is the value for a new customer, especially if you're bringing in a new customer, if you're remarketing existing customer, what is the incremental value of that customer having another visit to them? And then, like, to me, that's the calculus that you need to do, because really different, quick serve, fast casual, fine dining, geography. I mean, these are vastly different. And then we, because we're across industries, think about, okay, what's the value for, real estate and fitness, health, health and beauty and restaurant. And it's just a lot of variables to play with. So that's a fundamentally local question for each location.
Yeah, and I like how you just sort of hit on the lifetime value of the customer, because, the first thing that goes through my mind, and this is where, I spend a lot of time talking to operators, is understanding things like, again, I called it customer behavior before, but what I mean by that is how much are they spending? And if it's a quick serve place and your average customer spends $10, but you have to spend $2 or whatever it might be to get them to even come in, I mean, that gap's not that big. But if you can get them to come in 10 or 15 or 20 or 100 times, obviously then it starts to, make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, and sometimes people get frustrated at the local level because some of that stuff's hard to measure, right? Especially if you don't have a loyalty platform or something where you can get these folks in and figure out, like, okay, who are they? When are they coming in? How often are they coming in? And there's some really good platforms out there that help with that. But yeah, I mean, the sophisticated marketers. We like to talk about sophisticated marketing, simple, not any marketing, because anyone can press a button and screw something up. Like, I could go in 15 seconds and run a post on TikTok right now while we're doing this podcast, and it will be crappy and it won't resonate with anyone, right? So it's like sophisticated. But the folks who do sophisticated marketing, like really interesting marketing, they're looking at prospecting and bringing net new customers in very differently than bringing an existing customer back, right? The value difference there is dramatically different. And so what I would encourage folks to think about is to split their world into those two halves, right? And to go, okay, I can afford to give a bigger discount, promotion, spend a little more money, even if there's no promotion involved on the paid channels per customer. If I'm getting a brand new customer who now I know and I can fold into my remarketing audience, and I can then work them to keep them coming back in. But I have to know about the place, right? And so it's harder. It's going to be a little more expensive, but the value, you could calculate that even on a yearly basis. Like, how many burgers is that one customer that I acquired in? Like, to my franchise example, how many, beers am I going to have? I love to drink beer, watch a game, right? Like, how many friends am I going to bring in? How many beers am I going to have throughout the course of a year now that I know that place is there, right? So that's the lifetime customer value that I think about. So that's really, really prominent on the prospecting side of the audience set.
Interesting. Okay, so one of the last questions that I have for you is, you mentioned that high school pickup or that delivery thing is amazing to me. That's the school has a system for that. I mean, good for that. But do you find that some of this local digital marketing stuff works? Does it work better for third-party delivery than it does for dine-in? Or is there a certain area that, when you start working with a new company, do you say, hey, let's focus on one of these first? Or is it just, more of a broad approach?
The first thing we do, and in fact, I was talking with our product team this morning about this, right? So the first thing we do is, how do we become omnipresent? This is a fancy way of saying, like, everywhere, right? Yeah. Everywhere, omnipresent digitally in the local area, so that there's no one online, which is 90 something, who's not online, 90% of people, right? That doesn't know that I'm here, right? So that's the first thing. That's the first barrier. And that should be always on. You don't have to spend a ton of money on it. A little bit of money goes a long way. You gotta turn on an awareness. We gotta be aware, right? And then there's there are the bursts, right? So that's Michael's question on the 3 p.m. burst, right? The 3 p.m. burst, we're dead in the restaurant. Got a lot of capacity. The incremental value of a customer, new or existing, coming in and eating during that time is much higher because I got latent capacity, right? Than them coming in at 6 and standing in line and having a mediocre experience getting in the door, right? And so to me, those are the things that you then layer on. And COVID taught us that online ordering. My daughter, who I talked about at the school, well, she orders from our partner Smoothie King. Like she'll get an ad in Smoothie King, order it, go through the app, do a delivery, and all of a sudden I got a Smoothie King, big old Smoothie King cup sitting on my kitchen counter, and she spent $15, right? So of course she makes $9 an hour or something. So it's like, how much of her discretionary spending did that take up for the week? A lot of it, right? So to me, you have to be omnipresent first, so folks know where you are and where to come, and then you get bursts, and you burst when you need folks to drive online orders or to drive other activities when you need demand. And that can be manual or it can be automated through a system to just do all that for you based on your inventory levels, your demand numbers, your sales data. That can all be automated, so you don't think about it. But that's the way it works.
That's really, I think that's really good advice. We try to always make sure that, anytime for every episode we do, that we try to make sure that there's some key takeaways like that for people, right? And I think that's a really good one, is that awareness is first, and then you go after, when is there opportunity? Because it's interesting, I'm sitting here thinking now that you've just mentioned that, I'll see ads sometimes on my feed, and it's clearly an ad. And I'm like, I've never even heard of this place or this business or whatever, restaurant or something else.
Yeah.
So maybe that them maybe not doing the awareness phase first. They're just starting to throw out advertising that there's no relationship with the potential customer.
Yeah, well, there's kind of a famous report that's probably a decade or more old now called Zero Moment of Truth, and that's it was some research that Google did in the e-commerce world back in the day, and it's applicable across all industries, but it's the number of touches you need to have for a customer to take action and come buy from you. And in the e-commerce world, it varied by type of e-commerce company, but really, if you boil it down, and we see this across industries too, somewhere between 12 and 20 touches to a customer. You need to get 12 to 20 touches to a customer before they come in and experience you for the first time. And then you need another 10 to 15 before after giving a good experience, for them to become an evangelist and an advocate and get into the loyalty loop of recommending you. And so it's just a reality. Like, we can be pissed off about it. We want them to come, see one ad and respond and come in, but like, that's the reality. It doesn't have to cost a ton of money to do that, but that's your thing, Jim. You got to see them in the local environment. And by the way, these platforms are really smart about targeting. So they'll target family members. They know who's in your family. They know where you live. It's a little creepy, but they're showing you the restaurant, and then they show, your kids are seeing, your spouse is seeing the restaurant. And all of a sudden at the dinner table, you're like, hey, I was thinking about, Italian food. And, I don't know, that there's this new restaurant down the road. By the way, might not be new. It's new to them, right? And then, so that's the way it works, is you have to have multiple touches. And that's why I talk about being always on, omnipresent in your local area.
Yeah. And I actually heard an interesting thing the other day too, about how marketing has evolved, and that your brain doesn't understand that it's digital versus dining in the restaurant.
Yep.
It's starting to build that relationship and trust, and like you said, evangelism and that kind of thing. It's so interesting. So awareness is the first thing you always recommend. Is there a second sort of, everybody has to think about this one thing, or second thing, I guess, if you're getting into the space?
Yeah, well, I think, to me, again, awareness is the right first step. And then the second thing is, and we talked a little bit about hey, I tried it and it didn't work, right? Mm-hmm. that's what gets into the sophistication. So when you think about the types of data that you use, we talked a little bit about, we dove in a little bit to remarketing, but there's a lot more there. And then there's all of the other stuff, right? Like we talked about channels. What message are you sending? What bid set, like geeky marketing stuff, like what bid settings, what objectives are you going after? How long are you running this stuff before it refreshes? Like, you know, what success signal are you feeding into the system so it knows when you want, right? And so those are all the things that as you evolve your sophistication level, if you have the time to do it, you'll start to build in and fold in and test and learn. And that's what the biggest companies in the space do at a corporate level, right? So that they'll take all these market development funds and then they'll go, okay, let's wire up all this data and then start to use it and test and learn and build all these data loops involved. Now, in a lot of cases, in the franchise world at least, they're using the market development funds from the local operator to do that, right? And sometimes that's a prickly subject, right? So because there's a lack of transparency there often, which is, where the hell are my dollars going, right? My dollars are going to this marketing program that I can't see, I don't believe is helping me at a local level, right? And so that's where we get into the need for this collaboration and transparency between the parent and the in the location itself, in terms of feeding all the data, wiring it in, and letting the location run their own marketing where they can see everything and see the dollars and where the dollar. I think franchise locations need to demand that, frankly. Like we're past the days that this stuff should all be black box stuff to me. So awareness I digressed from your question, but awareness first, and then you start to experiment and wire in data. And I would get some success then from a direct response perspective. So try some promotions, right? I don't always go to promotion first because it's it can be a downward spiral, but try some just to see them. And online ordering is a nice attributable thing. If you have online ordering in your app, if you have online ordering on your website, you can see those transactions. So now you can feel the success without having to do the instrumentation that Michael again is asking about, how to harvest contacts and understand people who are coming into the restaurant, because that's a deeper question and conversation about how to do that. There are lots of things and tools that you can use to do that with, both device listening, like I talked about from a targeting perspective, and things like loyalty, which gets a lower set of adoption, credit card matching programs. There's a bunch of stuff you can do there, but get some success, right? So awareness, get people to know about you. That's a long-term play, right? So you gotta run that for weeks, months, years, right? Like that's always on, low dollar about, and then burst. Do some online ordering so you see the POS start to tick up a little bit, and you get some feeling of win, so that you understand that this stuff actually works.
I think that's great advice. Get some awareness going, and then experience some small wins. I mean, that's good advice for any business, I think. So thank you for that.
Brilliant, right, Matt? Brilliant.
No, it's great because it kind of simplifies something that I think a lot of people are really intimidated by, right? The whole concept of paid advertising and, the new age of marketing digitally, and TikTok, there's a lot of people, I'm probably one of them that goes like, how do we do this TikTok thing? So our friend Sean Walchef, who's very, very good at TikTok, he's been nudging me more than subtly for a couple of years to get more involved in that space. But thank you so much for all this information. I mean, clearly Michael's getting some good stuff out of it. I think there's probably lots of other people. I'm not sure if Adam's got anything to add. I know he's had a bit of a Wi-Fi issue, but on behalf of both of us, Matthew, we can't thank you enough for the relationship and for spending some time with us. Do you have any sort of closing remarks or statements or anything last things you want to share with the listeners?
Well, just to second that, thanks to you guys. Like just the awareness, and when you're a business like ours and you do what we do across industry verticals, and we have a really heavy focus on the restaurant industry because we just think we can help, and so like that franchise location it just like crushes me. Like it sounds overly dramatic, but it's legitimate. Like when you walk in and someone has poured their heart and money and fortune into a business like a franchise location, and they're like, no one's walking in the door, right? Like it's just like, and I didn't want to be like expert guy, like, hey, you should do that, but it just hurts, right? And so it really helps to have to have you guys helping us tell the story out there about what it can be, because it doesn't have to take a ton of time. It doesn't have to be hard. It can be push button or even fully automated, so it just runs, and it doesn't have to be expensive. Yeah. But like, we got to get out of the past and into the modern day. Like e-commerce has already gone through with some of these industries, in food service in particular, is making that transition. But we got to, I think the combination of us getting the word out, we can really move the needle.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And again, thanks, Matthew, so much for your time. To everybody who's listening today, Adam's waving goodbye. Thanks again. We'll be back again next week. Matthew, we should definitely have you back on again to have some more discussion again down the road.
Love to.
And we'll see everybody next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Turning the Table with me, Adam Lamb, and Jim Taylor. We're on a mission to change the food and beverage industry for the better by focusing on staff mental health, physical and emotional well-being, by proactively measuring and managing staff workloads. Join other hospitality professionals co-creating the #NewHospitalityCulture by subscribing to our weekly newsletter at www.turningthetable.podcast.com/news. In every edition, you'll find innovative solutions ready to test and validate in your operation this weekend. Plus, listen to exclusive bonus content just for you. Connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram at Turning the Table Podcast. If you found value in this episode, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Give us a star rating. It helps other hospitality professionals just like you find the show. Or better yet, grab the show link and share it with a friend or colleague who you want to see succeed. Thanks for stepping in and speaking out for an industry, craft, and fraternity that serves us all. Remember, retention is the new cool, y'all. This podcast was written, directed, and produced by me, Adam Lamb, and Jim Taylor. Turning the Table is a production of Realignment Media.